The Lord said to Moses, "Cut 2 tablets of stone like the former ones, and I will write on the tablets the words that were on the former tablets which you broke. Be ready in the morning, and come up in the morning to Mount Sinai, and present yourself there to me on the top of the mountain. No one shall come up with you, and do not let anyone be seen throughout all the mountain. And do not let flocks or herds graze in front of that mountain." So Moses cut 2 tablets of stone like the former ones, and he rose early in the morning and went up on Mount Sinai, as the Lord had commanded him, and took in his hand the 2 tablets of stone. The Lord descended in the cloud and stood with him there, and proclaimed the name, the Lord. The Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for the 1,000th generation, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, yet by no means clearing the guilty, but visiting the iniquity of the parent upon the children and the children's children to the 3rd and the 4th generation. And Moses quickly bowed his head toward the earth and worshipped. He said, "If now I have found favor in your sight, O Lord, I pray, let the Lord go with us. Although this is a stiff-necked people, pardon our iniquity and our sin, and take us for your inheritance." The Lord said to Moses, "Write these words. In accordance with these words, I have made a covenant with you and with Israel." He was there and with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. He neither ate bread nor drank water, and he wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 Commandments. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
I should probably apologize right off of the bat that I might start to geek out a little bit this Lent as we talk about the small catechism, because I just really appreciate this part of our faith instruction. And I find some of the ways that Luther opens them up for us and expands our understanding of them really fascinating and important to us. And as I've said probably more than a few times now, the major part of Lent has to do with re-examining ourselves and reinforcing who we are as Christians, as disciples of Jesus and as children of God. We can do that through fasting and almsgiving, giving up something this season, giving more of ourselves. We can do that through confession and repentance, cleansing and renewing our spirits and souls. And we can do that by renewing our baptismal identity, affirming our faith and reaffirming our baptismal promises. And this is what I tell every confirmation class. That last part, affirming our baptisms, is what confirmation is. And part of our Lutheran confirmation process is to learn the Catechism, to learn the basic tenets of our faith. So that's what we are doing this Lent here at St. Paul's. These 5 midweek services will focus on a different part of the Catechism each week. Sure, they have to be quick glances. We can't be here all night because there's a lot of material there. But remember, the point Martin Luther was making was for this catechism was to learn it and reinforce it at home. This was so that the parents could teach their children. This is so that every person could know deep down who God is and what God means to them. So really, after tonight, we probably shouldn't have services. You can just be at home reading the Catechism on your own on Wednesday nights, right? There's too much agreement there, I think. Obviously, right now, the push behind much of this is the anticipation of that 500th anniversary of the Reformation. And maybe you saw that video clip of Bishop Eaton a couple weeks ago encouraging us to hear the Catechism with new voices. Hearing something that is, for some, so familiar, and yet for others is brand new in this new way. The push for Luther himself to write this nearly 500 years ago was this. I wanted to read this from his preface to the Small Catechism. The deplorable, wretched deprivation that I recently encountered while I was a visitor has constrained and compelled me to prepare this catechism, or Christian instruction, in such a brief, plain, and simple version. Dear God, what misery I beheld! The ordinary person, especially in the villages, knows absolutely nothing about the Christian faith. And unfortunately, many pastors are completely unskilled and incompetent teachers. That was then, of course. Yet supposedly they all bear the name Christian, are baptized, and receive the Holy Sacrament, even though they do not know the Lord's Prayer, the Creed, or the Ten Commandments. As a result, they live like simple cattle or irrational pigs, and despite the fact that their gospel has returned, have mastered the fine art of misusing all their freedom. So there it is. He wasn't mincing words. Those people must have been a mess, right? I'm glad we are not as nearly as screwed up as they were. I would just leave that one there for tonight. But where does Luther start then in his commandments? In the Catechism. With the commandments. The things that God gave to Moses to give to the Israelites. Those things that were so important that they needed to be inscribed into those stone tablets. The things that were so important that when the first set of tablets were broken, they needed to be inscribed in a new set of tablets so that the people would have them. So here's tonight's first quiz. You didn't know there would be a quiz, did you? What are the commandments? Let's put them up. What's the first commandment? Okay. See, who needs PowerPoint? Second one. Don't misuse the name of your God. Third one. Remember the Sabbath. Fourth. See, you don't need to be here. Fifth. Should not murder. Sixth. Seventh. Just take two. Eighth. What? Don't bear false witness, that's right. Don't lie. Ninth. Neighbor's house. Don't covet your neighbor's house. And the 10th. All those, don't covet your neighbor's wife, male or female slaves, ox, donkey, anything. I ran out of work. I ran out of space on the paper. So we have the 10 Commandments, all the important things for us to remember. And I think I've talked about this a couple of years ago, that maybe instead of being rules that we should think of as that we have to follow, we see them as promises to ways that we can be in relationship with God and God's children. And speaking of, this goes back to your confirmation. There's two categories. These are split into two categories, right? Relationship with God, the first three, how we're in relationship with God, and then the rest, how we're in relationship with our neighbors, with others. Okay, you did very well on your first quiz. So here's your second quiz. Raise your hand if you've ever broken one of these commandments. Shame on you! Seriously, you did? What was wrong with you? We're sinful. They're very hard to keep. We're human beings. How many of you have probably broken one in the course of today? It's okay. Well, it's not okay, but we can admit that. It's okay to admit. I could tell you story after story of how each one of these has freed me to live in a new way and as a child of God. And I could tell you story after story of how I've broken pretty much every single one of those and how they've hurt me as well. Because remember, these commandments aren't just what's on the surface. It's not just these words here. The Catechism and Luther's explanations have helped open up the meaning and expand them to give us greater meaning. And as I said, much of that comes from those explanations, and I'm sure many of you memorized those, right? I'm sure many of you maybe still even remember all of those. I could bring you up here. That's quiz number 3, by the way. No. But hopefully you can, for those who do remember them, hopefully they still mean something. For those who maybe don't remember them or have never memorized them, hopefully you're reading them through them in the Catechism and through that Lenten devotional book we have this season. But those are the pieces that help us to see these commandments in new ways. But unfortunately, those explanations can also cause even more grief and challenge for us. Because when it comes to the commandments and those explanations, I've had more questions about this one piece of it, and it's something that I've questioned myself. So, do you remember how each explanation starts? We are to fear and love God so that, for each one. We are to fear and love God? I've had more questions of people saying, are we supposed to fear God? What does fearing God mean? Can't we just stick to the love part of that? And there are days that I wonder that too. Am I supposed to fear God? If God is a God that I'm supposed to fear, do I want to be doing this? Like I said, I really like that loving side of things. And I have to admit, I don't have a great answer. I still question about this fear stuff, but it's been opened up to me a little bit, especially when we hear those commandments come down to us at the beginning in the Exodus version. And it begins, then God spoke all these words, I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. And you think he would go on to number 2, but he keeps going. You shall not make for yourself an idol, whether in the form of anything that's in heaven above, or that's on the earth beneath, or in the water. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. Here's the good part. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing children for the iniquity of parents to the 3rd and the 4th generation of those who reject me, but showing steadfast love to the 1000th generation of those who love me and keep my commandments. So even in this first command from God, we get this idea of fear and love. We are supposed to fear and make ourselves keep these commandments, yet in the same way, love God because God loves us. This is even goes on to be reflected in the Psalms, where David writes, his delight is not in the strength of a horse, nor his pleasure in the speed of a runner, but the Lord takes pleasure in those who fear him, in those who hope in his steadfast love. So there is both. I don't know what it is to fear God. I don't think I'm afraid that God would smite me or I don't know. But it's that fear and that awe and that reverence that keeps us respecting and honoring God and thinking about how we can honor God and honor one another. I did have one piece that Luther did expand on in his large catechism, which is basically his reprimanding all the priests and pastors, and it's about 5 times as long as the small catechism. But he writes, and this has helped me, I think. Now, as we said before, these words contain both a wrathful threat and a friendly promise. The command from Exodus, not only to terrify and warn us, but also to attract and allure us, so that we will receive and regard God's word as seriously as God does. For God declares how important the commandments are to him and how strictly he will watch over them, namely that he will fearfully and terribly punish all who despise and transgress his commandments. And again, how richly he will reward, bless, and bestow all good things on those who prize them and gladly act and live in accordance with them. Thus he demands that all our actions proceed from a heart that fears God, looks to him alone, and because of this, fear avoids all that is contrary to his will, lest he be moved to wrath. Conversely, he demands that our actions proceed from a heart that trusts in him alone, and for his sake does all that he asks of us, because he reveals himself as a kind Father and offers us every grace and blessing. I know for me personally, this Lent, that is a blessing for me, to hear of God in both those ways and to see how I am called to live in both those ways. And I hope in this week and in this whole season that maybe one of these commandments, one of these explanations may trouble you as well, to the point that you can hear God's word of blessing as well. So blessings on your journey. Amen.